Boots on the ground, ladies and gentlemen, in Ukraine now seems an inevitability. I've been warning about this. I've given the exact same date. I've not changed my tune. Go back, look through my videos, ladies and gentlemen, okay? But before you do that, can you please hit the buttons below, the like, the subscribe button, the follow, and please share my stuff on your socials, because we need to get as many people to understand where we are heading right now as humanly possible. All roads right now realistically are leading to British boots on the ground. Now, I've been away for a couple of days because I had an absolute information overload of what people are telling me from the east of Europe. This ranges from people who work for NGOs, people who know people who actually serve in the Ukrainian military, serving British military. The information overload, I was just sat back and I couldn't believe what was happening so quickly and so in your face as well. Now, I've done lots of videos talking about this diversions where the United Kingdom would focus on the conflict in Eastern Europe and the United States would focus on a conflict in the Middle East. Now, I've done lots of videos about the Middle East, why that has to happen logistically, how the Americans are the only ones who can actually pull that off, and that nothing that NATO could add to that mixture would assist them in any way. Now, what we're going to talk about now is what's happening in Europe. We have got Keir Starmer. In fact, let me just go straight onto the share screen, ladies and gentlemen, and show you the situation on the ground in Ukraine. So this is the situation on the ground in Ukraine as of the first of this year. So like what, a month and a half ago or something. Now, what I want you guys to notice and take note of is this pincer movement. For example, around Valyeka, Novosilka, where the Russians come from the north and the south and then close that pincer movement up. Also, keep note of the town here of Pokrovs. This town of Pokrovs is the last fortress town. The Ukrainians call it a city, but if it was in Europe, it would be classed as a town. So anyway, I'm just going to skip forwards now, ladies and gentlemen. What I want you guys to take note of is the amount of ground the Russians are taking daily, and this is the reason. This is what is dictating everything. Don't listen to anyone else, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, they don't know what they're talking about. So I'm just going to click forwards. Each click donates 1 day in temporal, one day, 24-hour period. Now, you've got to look at the amount of ground the Russians are taking every day here, ladies and gentlemen. And the onslaught is unbelievable. I'm hearing from my sources in Ukraine that the Russians are taking around 20 square kilometers per day. So the town of Valyeka Novosilka is gone. This area here, if you remember that pincer movement, they've conducted this pincer movement. I would say this is going to be closed up very soon. And then this area is going to be lost. And then at some point, they're going to come from the north over this, over from to the north of Pokrovs, close down Pokrovs, and then that's going to be it for Pokrovs. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, Pokrovs is a key fortress town in that region of the world. So most recently, then there's an emergency European, an emergency summit held in Paris today. What I think is happening here, I think I've got no information on this. I'm speculating that they're invoking NATO Article 4. So NATO Article 4 means NATO Article 4 is basically when countries come together and they discuss when they can attack another countries. They come to an agreement. They say, right, okay, if X, Y, and Z happens, we're going to do this. And that's kind of Article 4, NATO Article 4. People always talk about. Sorry, my Yorkshire accent came out then. People normally talk about Article 5. I've done lots of videos and I've said how Article 5, NATO Article 5, isn't any protection for anyone. There is no protection under NATO, under the Articles of Agreement. So let's go now on to what's been happening with Keir Starmer. What's Keir Starmer said? Let's go back onto the share screen. Live update from 18 minutes ago. Ukraine-Russia war latest. Starmer willing to send British forces to police Ukraine border. Now, what we've got to this comes as part of an as part of a peacekeeping mission. But what we've got to consider is what peacekeeping mission do we think Vladimir Putin is going to accept boots on the ground? Like, it just makes no sense that Vladimir Putin would accept that. Look at the facts, ladies and gentlemen. Don't listen to the mainstream media. They don't know what they're talking about. And I'm going to say most of the politicians don't know what they're talking about either. They don't understand the dynamics. They don't understand the culture. They don't understand the Russian propaganda machine. It's absolutely insane how people fall for these tricks time and time again. Ask yourself this, ladies and gentlemen. If you was in a poker game, you had all the chips, you had all the cards, all the chips, I guess. Cards would be irrelevant in a poker game. You've got all the chips. You're down to, you're doing heads up with another player, and you're winning. You are winning that player. It's looking like just the small blinds are going to take them away at some point, and you don't really need to do anything. And then that player says, well, do you want to call it a draw and we'll split the chips? What are you going to say? You're going to say, well, actually, I'm good, thank you. I'm just going to win. I'll just win. And the only point in that poker game where you would accept to split the pot would be if you've got a comparable amount of chips. Translate that to the battlefield. If you're at comparable strength, you're both in an impasse. You're taking 10 kilometers, they're taking 10 kilometers. They're taking 10 kilometers, then you're taking it back. You can only have a ceasefire agreement. And remember, ceasefire doesn't mean a stopping the war. You can only have a ceasefire agreement if there's an impasse. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry to tell you, but you can't have a peace negotiation, a ceasefire deal, if one side is pushing forwards 20 square kilometers every day. It's absurd. Now, what I've said many, many times, and I've done it on many, many videos, that Donald Trump is going to come out and he's going to say something like, excuse me, I've spoke to Vladimir Putin and I've given him a real good deal. I gave Zelensky a great deal. I negotiated the best deal for Zelensky. It's the best deal for Europe. It's the best deal for everybody. But those guys don't want the deal. So do you know what? I'm going to let those guys fight. Not one more dollar of U.S. taxpayers' money is going to be sucked up by the Europeans. Donald Trump's going to say something to words of those effects. And what you've got to understand is this is not political. This is financial. Think about all the American prime defense contractors who would lose out on that conflict. Well, guess what, sweet cheeks? They know there's a bigger fish to fry. They know there's a bigger game in town. So they're happy to forego Ukraine because they know that there's going to be a bigger conflict in the Middle East. That's why it's happening, ladies and gentlemen. No other reason. The United States can't break their spear on Ukraine. The United States can't fight a conflict from two. We've learned this from lessons from Afghanistan and Iraq. Trying to fight a conflict on two fronts, it just doesn't work. So right now I'm thinking this has been in the planning for years. And by years, I mean probably. Looking back, I've been in this space for quite a while. So looking back, I'm starting to see strange political movements and posturing that didn't make sense at the time that kind of makes sense now. So I'm going to say this has been in the making for at least 15 years. I'm going to say this plan's been on the cards for at least 15 years. Now, once this split happens, you're going to see fake hostilities happen between the United States and Europe. They're going to say, oh, you guys should be doing this. And then you're going to have these political leaders saying, oh, but you guys should be doing this. It's all pomp. It's all circus. It's all pageantry. The litmus test here will be that the United Kingdom will continue to let the United States use their airbase at RAF Akrotiri, which is on the southern tip of Cyprus. If there was a real spat between the United Kingdom and the United States, then that would happen. And then you've got you've got these people coming out saying, "Oh, Donald Trump's wanting peace." Do you know what, guys? When the United States Marine Corps or Expeditionary Force or whatever are all on the back of their amphibious landers heading towards Iran, come back and say, Donald Trump wants peace. Ladies and gentlemen, we are shaping the world up to a fan. It's going to be absolutely insane to watch. I think, and this is just my speculation, my opinion, I think what's going to happen is Europe is going to be consumed by the Russians. Yeah, I'm calling it now, ladies and gentlemen. I don't see anything. And listen, this is what I'm looking at right now. I don't see anything that can hold the Russians back right now. I was watching some. I can't remember who it was, or some so-called commentator on like I can't remember what news channel it was, and he was saying the Russians are not winning. The Russians. I'm thinking, are you deluded? Are you actually deluded? Like the Russians are like, look at the ground that the Russians are taking every day, and then you've got people on mainstream media saying the Russians are losing. Ladies and gentlemen, if you class winning a war by the amount of ground you're taking every day as opposed to the amount of ground your enemy's taking, then the Russians are winning. Now, what I think is going to be panned out by 2030 is going to be I think that Europe, and then again, this is what I'm seeing now. If this changes, I'll let you know. But what I'm seeing now is Russia and Russia taking control of Europe up to the United Kingdom, the United Kingdom becoming part of the United States, and then being the American vanguard. The United States obviously taking control of Canada, Greenland, Panama Canal, taking control of the United Kingdom. So therefore they would take control of the Falklands. Because they take control of the Falklands, that would give the United States the control of Antarctica. The Russians then needing to be financially propped up by the Chinese. Then you've got the North Koreans. Guys, honestly, this whole thing is about to pop off. I've been saying this from day one, week one. The world is heading towards a global conflict of an industrial scale. I've been saying this for the longest time, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to mag to grid now, ladies and gentlemen. I'll get you guys another video later.